people come and say, how come all these dolphins just jump on your head and, you know, always hang around you? And I said, well, it's really easy. You've got to connect to what I call, and it's just my label, you can have your own label, I call it the Lady of the Sea.
Well, a warm water welcome to all of you listening live right now and anyone who listens to this recording in the future. You might be a track pilot, a paddler, an experienced adventure guide, or a beginner and it's all new, or you might have nothing to do with paddling and you're just curious. You're still in the right place. I'm your host, Nicholas Jones. We're really grateful that you've joined us and we want you to know we appreciate your listening and the time you're offering to this new conversation. We may not know each other, but we're all connected by virtue of one thing, water. It's the water that we have in common that's been around for millions of years. It's the water that connects us all and flows inside us and around us. So as you join us, please type into the chat window and please tell us two things. One is what the nearest body of water is to you. We'd like to know the nearest body of water to you. And the second one, really important, tell us how much time you spend outdoors. Just as a rough percentage over the course of a month or a year, just tell us how much time you spend outdoors, okay? And you'll see why that's important later. So you're listening to episode 5 of a new series on Track's Zoom Away Blue Fridays. The series is a new conversation unfolding like a gift. You have likely felt the positive benefits of being in, on, and around water. We're going to look at the deeper inherent reasons for that. In this series, Wellness Equal Water, we're taking a journey with you to discover the connection between water and wellness within. We'll unpack the many dimensions of water and how it impacts human health and biology and the health of the planet. So join us and help us create a blueprint to navigate this journey, leading the way to uncover the source of human vitality and possibly redefine our understanding of a new biology and the life-charging qualities of water. My name is Nicholas Jones. I'm your host for Wellness Equal Water. I'm speaking to you right now from Ketch Harbor in Nova Scotia, Canada. So the nearest body of water to me is the Atlantic Ocean. It's about 200 meters down the street. But the reality is, and I'm going to answer the second part of the question here, since we moved here, and it's only been 3 weeks, I've only spent maybe 2 hours a day on average out of the 24 hours outside. So when I did the calculation, since I work and sleep indoors, that's only about 8% of the time. So actually, I'm inside 92% of the time. That was kind of shocking to realize that. Maybe that's why I'm so white. We'll see why we asked this question a little later in the episode. I've been working with Nolan and the track team for 13 years. I'm a corporate shaman, a truth seeker, and a sense maker. And my mission is to bring the spirit back into work. I am no expert. I'm constantly asking why, and I try to keep a beginner's mind. So to use water as the analogy, I know I'm one drop in the ocean, but that really empowers me. Knowing that the truth is the whole ocean, and we're each as a drop, whole, complete, and indivisible, each containing a piece of that truth. So first I'd like to introduce Nolan Bayard, track founder and managing director. He's going to give us the why of how this conversation started in the first place and set the stage. So over to you, Nolan.
Well, thanks, Nicholas. Welcome everyone to this call. We're in for a real treat today. And we have a guest that's literally going to bring light to this series and of course to water. And you know, the question you ask is why we did this series in the first place. And so for me to be kind of frank and real about it, I mean, it's so people can learn from human beings like our guest today. These are people that think differently, that aren't sort of accepting our current paradigms, that aren't really working, and are starting to challenge that and coming across things that can have a big impact on how we see health, and not just health, you know, health of human beings, but also the health and wellness of the planet. And so you're not going to see these kinds of people through a lot of the mainstream means, which is, you know, why we wanted to start to unveil and unpack a lot of this work that a lot of these people from different parts of the world can help us help us really understand and really give ourselves a deeper perspective and maybe a shift of how we see health from our own perspective. Now, our guest today has a story about the role of water and other dimensions of human health, that are, I think, really worth listening to. He's also a fellow entrepreneur, has that really in his blood. And so I've enjoyed exploring that side of things with him as well. Now, Nicholas is going to give a deeper dive into Jason's, bio and background. But when I first learned about Jason and heard him speak, I just knew we had to have him on this program. I knew we needed to hear that kind of no-nonsense approach that Jason brings to the table. He really has kind of a fresh and refreshing view of things. And we get to learn about the insights that, into the role of the sun and infrared light and waves, the infrared light and waves, and how that interacts with the water in our bodies. And I find that is just really fascinating to see how those interplay. And it's simple. That some of the best and wisest things that we learn about in life usually come down to really simple principles. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of what Jason has to share with us. And this is also about quantum physiology and quantum, we talk about quantum physics. That might sound like a complex topic, but it actually comes back to some very simple principles. And this is like a quantum time we're living in. And so to start to tap into some of the quantum level thinking here and getting it down to these simple elements, I think we're really fortunate to have Jason share some of this with us today. And I personally like the play on words, of shedding light on water, which we need to know more. On one level, we need to know more about water and the power of water and not downplay it. But we also literally see the effect of light on water, and what that impact has in terms of our health and how it plays out in nature as well. So I think we're in for some really super cool stuff. And from my perspective, I'm just really honored to have Jason join us and for all of you to take in this conversation, because these are conversations that you don't see happening everywhere. And so, we need to keep open and hear different perspectives. And so we're gonna, I'll turn it back to Nicholas and let him formally introduce Jason, and we'll kick it off and get going.
Awesome. No, it's not a normal conversation, Nolan. It's not a normal conversation, especially when a company's having it. So thank you so much for that. So this conversation is going to be about 45 minutes long. We'll try and keep it there, followed by a 10 to 15 minute Q&A. And we didn't want these conversations to be overly structured and controlled. So we're going to flow like a strong, mature river, intentional, but meandering, that still gets to the ocean. So we just ask that you flow along with us. Our chat window is managed by Curtis, so please add comments, questions, or share a story in the chat box, and we'll come back to it in the Q&A. And to keep our sound quality as good as possible, please mute yourself, or we'll keep you muted until the Q&A opens up. So let's kick this off by acknowledging that we're about 70% water. The Earth is about the same, 70% water. And we're going to be talking mostly about water here in this series. So to date, we've learned that water whispers to your mind and shifts your moods. It has an innate intelligence and can paint pictures when it freezes to communicate with us. We also learned about resilience and persistence in a ballad about water and a rock from an absolutely inspiring adventurer. And in our last episode, we heard how through an intimate relationship with water, over time, we experience a truly transformative personal shift in our wellness. So in summary, know your water, know yourself. You were born in water, you cannot live without water, and if we move beyond just managing it or using it as a resource, there is a boundless gift available. So let's jump into the deep end. I want to introduce our guest, Jason Bawden-Smith. Nolan literally had to hunt him down for this episode. Yeah, he was hiding in Noosa. It's a paradise near the coast of sunshine and gold in Queensland State, Australia. So you may not have heard of Jason Bawden-Smith. He doesn't need to tweet or claim celeb status for what he's been up to. He's just been quietly cleaning up the entire country of Australia for over 25 years. as an environmental health expert and an entrepreneur running one of Australia's largest environmental consultancies. He's got an army of 250 scientists and engineers. And in his words, he said, you could be a good guy, contribute to society and Mother Earth, and make money. So he's all about the and, as you'll find. As a biophysicist engaged in quantum biology, he's a unique blend of analytical and spiritual. He's got 2 applied science degrees, but we're not just talking to him today because he's smart. We're going to hear from Jason because he's shedding light on water. His lens is truly unique, and he holds a key to our health and our wellness. So on behalf of the global track community, we're delighted and grateful to welcome Jason to join us now. Hey, Jason.
Hey,
Thank
Nicholas
you so
and Nolan and Jay, to all the other participants on the Zoom call. Great to be here. You're going to ask me how close is the water?
We are going to ask you that right now, Jason. You read my mind. So where are you?
I'm in Sunshine Beach, funny enough, purposely picked because it's one of the magic spots of Australia. It's in the Noosa Shire, and I'm probably, with no wind today, about a 5 iron, about 200 meters to the Pacific Ocean, a few minutes walk. And it's just been magic here for the last little while because we have the humpback whales who've gone up to breed and had their babies, and they're now coming back. So I can sit on the balcony overlooking the water and see these humpback whales breed. You can, you know, they can flap their tails and fins. And even 2 days ago, I had the magic experience of seeing a blue whale live up in personal, only 100 meters away from the beach. They are enormous. You don't realize how big they are. They are just massive. So I'm very blessed to be here in Noosa and enjoying the sunshine and the ocean. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
That's awesome. Well, I was a little jealous initially when we kicked this off, Jason. Now I'm very jealous, right? And I know you mentioned before too that you can actually talk to them. So we might get into that. We'll see. But I do want to pick up where we left off with asking our viewers, you know, to say, you know, how much time they spend outdoors, and just to share some of the comments. So typically we had a lot of people say 1 to 2 hours is what they spend outside. Someone said 10% is how much time they spent outside. Someone said 2 to often 4 hours per day. So that might be like 20% of their time outside. So there's a statistic you shared that seems to be broad-based about how much time people spend inside. Do you want to address that? Do you remember sharing that in a podcast once?
I do. So the scientific research done by the US EPA documented and published between 96 and 98% of everyone's life is spent indoors. And
Wow.
the question you're asking is the #1 question to understand how human health actually works. So we have been biologically designed for hundreds of thousands. If you speak to the indigenous people, they would say millions of years evolving with nature. And they spent their whole time outside except when they were asleep or hiding from danger in a cave. And they pretty much ran around in the warmer climates with no clothes. They literally had their full skin, no sunglasses, no sunscreen, running around the bush, gathering their food and hunting the animals. And that's how we evolved. That's how the whole biological system evolved. And we've lost that. We've forgotten that. So now modern humans, we think we're so smart. So we say, well, we don't need to go outside. We'll create a house, we'll put air conditioning in, put the heater on, and we'll just live in this little bubble environment and live happily ever after. Well, we're not. We're all chronically ill. And the reason we're ill is we've lost connection with nature. We've lost connection to the way we are biologically designed. And this is not Jason saying it. This is just the way nature's developed over time. So I spend between, on a bad day, 2 hours, on a good day, 8 hours outside. And I'm a corporate guy, right? Or ex-corporate guy. I'm not a gardener. I'm not a builder. So the tradies get to spend a lot more time outside, but most people are in the service industry and they work inside. And so I haven't calculated out, but I imagine that's 10 to 25% of my time I spend outside. And I really make it a priority. Like I'm up every morning at sunrise and I'm down the beach watching the sunrise. And there's very important reasons for that, which we can get into, but I'll let you lead the conversation, Nicholas.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. So clearly, you know, you've expressed the impact that over thousands of years, the more and more time we spent inside, especially with a technologically advanced society, we're really glued to our screens. But, you know, to go back to the beginning, let's look at how you got into all of this, right? I mean, you've set the stage. We have chronic illness. We're dealing with all kinds of challenges because we've shifted the way we naturally relate to being in the environment. But what was your original connection with water? How did everything start for you, you know?
Well, after I was conceived, I spent the first 9 months in water. We forget that, you know, we're born in water. It's when the waters break is when we enter the world. It's really important to remember that. Water is the number one essential ingredient to life. Sunlight being number two. We can argue which one's more important. They're both the same. So my connection with water was, I think, you know, we're going to talk a little bit spiritual later on, but I resonate with Sirius, which is a water star system. The cetaceans are from. So I've automatically been with water. As soon as I was allowed outside as a toddler, I'd go straight for the hose because we didn't have a pool when I was a toddler. So I was naturally attracted to water. When we did get a pool when I was a little bit older, I spent every moment I was allowed in that pool, pretending I was Marine Boy, an old cartoon with the oxygen chewing gum, holding my breath and playing with all these different aquatic animals. So my teenage years, I spent nearly all my free time at the beach. And that kind of leads on to the next kind of journey of my life is when most people see Sydney beaches now as world-class, the cleanest modern city beaches in the world. And they are. They're amazing. But when I was a kid, this is now, you know, I finished school in 1984. So in the, you know, late 70s, early 80s, when I was down the beach all the time as a teenager, I used to swim in shit, literally. There was effluent that was primary treated. So there's levels of treatment that a sewage treatment plant will have. Primary treatment is just screening. So I take the toilet paper out, the condoms and this, that, and the other out, and it would just go out to the ocean. And then the southerly winds would bring it onto the beach because Malabar was a little bit south from Maroubra, which is my surfing beach. And, you know, the classic story, you go down, you see these 3-4 foot sets, perfect banks. It's just one of those dream surfing days. It's offshore, so the waves are perfect. So you couldn't smell anything. And then, you know, you're paddling out, you get out there, and you're just looking at the water going, there's like condoms and tampons and, you know, effluent everywhere. And you're just shaking your head going, what the hell is going on? Now, from that episode, I ended up getting an ear infection and lost a third of my hearing in my right ear. And it also affected my balance. So I was unable to ride a board after that. I'm getting it back now, but had a dramatic effect on me. And it was an interesting episode when I got home. I was still living with my parents at the time, and I had like a 30-minute shower. Because, you know, because I stayed in the surf for hours because the waves are too good. You're just going to swim in shit, and that's the way it is. And I had a 30-minute shower, and my mother just went off at me. What are you using all the hot water for? What are you doing? I said, well, I've just been swimming in shit for 30 minutes. What are you talking about? I've got to get it all off me, da-da-da-da-da. And only as a mother can, you know, with the most loving eyes, she just stared right at me and said, well, what are you going to do about it? Now, I'm 16 at the time. I said, what am I going to do as a 16-year-old kid? She said, no, you know how to fix it. Go and fix it. And I just went, wow, how am I going to fix it? And I kept asking those questions. And I spent the next nearly 10 years working on solving Sydney's beach pollution problems. Now, I was only a small cog in a big wheel, or a drop in the ocean, as you said earlier, Nicholas. But I think I played a pretty important part. So when I was going to be a marine biologist because of my love of the ocean, But I said, no, I'm going to go and study water pollution. So I went and did a Bachelor of Applied Science in Environmental Health. My thesis was on the impact of a sewage treatment plant on creeks leading to a river out west in Sydney. And got a high distinction for that, which was great because I was so passionate about it. And then after that, I went and worked for the health department purposely because back in those days, they were responsible for a lot of the environmental work. Like environment and health were one back then. Now they've been separated, the biggest mistake we ever made. And yeah, I ended up stirring the pot a little bit. And eventually, with the help of a lot of others, they had a state parliamentary committee, and they then ran a big health survey and tested all the waters. And of course, they came to the conclusion that if you swim in shit, you're going to get eye, nose, and throat infections. It's pretty bloody obvious, but you know how government is. They've got to go do all the studies and da-da-da-da-da. When the results were coming in from the survey, because I ran the water sampling program, so I got to sample all the Sydney beaches. It was a wonderful, wonderful job. And I'd get the results pretty much straight away from the lab. And through 3 layers of separation, I'd leak those results to a guy called Mike Petrie, who was the surf reporter on a very popular radio station called Today FM. And he would announce the results. And you can imagine all the health authorities and all the environmental and politicians going, how the hell did he know that? And they couldn't prove it. They kind of knew it was me by process of elimination, but they couldn't prove it because I was too clever in the way I leaked it. So that ended up being the big inquiry. And the result was I wanted the effluent recycled back over the mountains and put back into the earth, because we're taking all these nutrients and all this and putting it in the ocean. And that's why Australian soils are so depleted, and most soils are depleted in the world. But we couldn't do it because of the contamination in the actual effluent, the metals, you know, the different organic pesticides. So they wouldn't let us recycle it. It was also very expensive to pump it all the way out there. So they built these big ocean outfalls, took it out, you know, a few kilometres and put it in the big currents that go south and diluted it down. It worked. You know, Sydney beaches are now the cleanest beaches in a modern city. They're so clean now that the whales with their calves come into Sydney Harbour. They swim up and down the coast, you know, pretty much back and forward all year round. And it's a wonderful thing. I was really happy to be part of that. And that led me on to doing more environmental health research, more in toxicology, going into childhood lead poisoning and mercury and a few other things. So after working in the health department, I wasn't built for the health department. You know, I'd go half pace and do twice as much as everybody else. It's just, I wasn't built for it. I'm a classic entrepreneur. I'm a problem solver. So I then tried academia for a while because I did my master's degree to get with the lead poisoning stuff, and I started a PhD. But I got so, you know, so much interest from people about the lead poisoning in their kids that I started a little consultancy company. And that little consultancy company became so big so quickly that I had to not complete my PhD. And that little company that I started back in 1996 is now pretty much the biggest contaminated land consultancy company in the country. As you mentioned earlier, it's very big. And we assess, we remediate, we validate, we audit contaminated sites all across the country now, including groundwater. We also treat groundwater. We've treated probably over 1 billion litres of contaminated groundwater. So yeah, that's what led me down that path. That's a very short, concise version. I can tell you.
I think so. Jason, thank you. I mean, that's a lot to take in. That's a huge accomplishment in a short amount of terrestrial time for a reincarnated cetacean from the Sirius star system. Welcome. I understand why the whales come and wave at you now. That's awesome. That's great. But let's get into that in terms of the crisis side of it, right? So here you are committed to the environment. And you said you didn't fit into health, but what's the connection between environment and health yet? Or is this, you know, flesh in exactly where we're at in our health overall, right? You said chronic illness, but What's the biggest threats we're dealing with right now as human beings? You know, what's the connection between environment and health? Where are we really at on the earth?
That's a big question. For me, everything is about vibration and frequency. And that's what we've forgotten. It's back when scientism kind of took over the whole debate, and we lost our connection with nature, with that morphogenic field that Ligmund Taggart talks about. So for me, the problem we have is we don't have enough natural frequencies and we have way too many artificial frequencies. Now, I can go into great details about what I call non-native EMF. So there's natural electromagnetic fields and then there's artificial electromagnetic fields. So the natural electromagnetic fields are sunlight. They're the Schumann resonance of Mother Earth. That's why grounding and earthing work so well. And there's energies from plants, from animals, from humans. They all come in a direct current, you know, the AC/DC. And I'm not talking about that famous Australian rock band. I'm talking about the alternative current. And everyone thinks they're English now because they left Australia about 20 years ago. Alternative current, and which we use for all electricity, and direct current. So everything natural uses a direct current, including us. But we think, oh, we're smarter than that. So thanks to Nikola Tesla, who I'm not a fan of, despite what everyone thinks. He's wonderful. He gave us the diseases we have today. Now, they could say it was JP Morgan and the finance guys that actually did it all, and that may be true. But it was his technology that led to the grid that we call it today, the electrical grid. So that was the first layer of artificial frequencies we had. And we had the
Sorry,
first...
Jason, you're talking about alternating current then when you say Tesla, right?
I am.
You're talking about AC versus DC, which is, you know, perfect ballad that, got us to this point. So just to underscore that, got it. And it was Edison that was pushing DC at the time, or like where was the...
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it was. And the reason AC won is back then we didn't have the semiconductor industry we have today.
Okay.
So we couldn't transmit the energy very far. So that's why they went for AC, because you go for kilometers. That was the reason they won. Today, we could just have DC. Mm-hmm. And we try and do it with solar, but then we put an inverter to convert it to AC. And that inverter is so toxic for people. Now, you can get inverters that have very low dirty electricity, but I've seen a number of children which have their bedroom up in the attic. You know how you have a spare room in the attic, and a lot of kids want to have their bedroom up there, and they're sleeping right under the solar panels on the ceiling. Serious illness. Take them away, they get better. So,
wow. So take us forward from there. So what other of these artificial frequencies after AC are we dealing with now in our planet?
So then we went to radio frequencies. So again, they're kind of lower on the spectrum. Maybe I should put a graph up of the spectrum, but they were the next round of technology we had. Then we invented radar from a military point of view. And then from radar, we just went ballistic. So we've now saturated the spectrum from, so 0 hertz is DC. The best way to explain hertz to a human is brain states. So you've got alpha, beta, delta, and alpha, beta. I'm missing one, and delta and theta. And they run between 0.5 up to around 40, some say up to 80 hertz, single hertz, HZ. We have now got technology. I'll give you an example. I don't have any here, but those famous, Apple earbuds you put in your head.
Yeah, AirPods, yeah.
Yeah, AirPods. They run at 2.4 megahertz. So that's 2.4 billion hertz you're putting into your ears, into your brain. You think that's not going to hurt your brain? Really? Come on.
Even
now,
if
I'm not going to turn this.
That's going to hurt you.
I'm not going to turn this to an EMF talk because we want to come back to water. But my biggest concern for health right now is we surround ourselves with technology, which I'm doing now. And it's wonderful, right? Because we're getting to communicate across the world. You guys are all in Canada, I'm in Australia. There's probably people around the world listening. So it's a wonderful device and we can make it safe. And that's what I've done with other businesses that I've been involved in. I could go into, you know, everyone's worried about 5G and all the latest technology. It's the Internet of Things that concerns me the most. So we have all these sensors and all these gadgets that everyone's in love with. Like they line up around the block for a new Apple phone. Like we're addicted. We are seriously addicted, and it's purposely done. And we are now adding more and more and more. Every fridge, toaster, dishwasher, any appliance you buy today has an RFID chip in, which is communicating back to a smart meter, which feeds into a smart grid that turns into a smart city. These are biologically unsafe cities for humans. It's one reason I moved up here to Noosa, is that I'm a Sydney boy, and I lived in the oldest, you know, Randwick is the oldest municipality in Australia, and it's toxic. You know, we have little meters, which I could show you later. I've got one over there. It's in extreme levels. If I go down to Coogee Beach, which is my home beach, where I spent my whole life, it is now at extreme radiation levels. Not high, extreme. Up here, I'm either zero or very low. So
we're swimming in a toxic electromagnetic circus, right? I mean, this is the picture you're painting right now in our modern society.
And we're seeing the results. 54, I think the latest stats I heard out of the US, 54% of children, kids, have one or more chronic diseases. And the reason they're all so fat and obese is all the artificial light that we're used to, and we're going to get back onto light in a minute. So it's not just the frequencies from technologies, it's the other frequencies just from your light bulb. In fact, I think the light bulb is probably the biggest contaminant that we've ever invented, more so than even the technology EMF.
Got it.
Because we used to have incandescent bulbs, you know, the ones that got hot when you replaced them. So they had a broader spectrum. That heat was the infrared. So the greenies said, no, you can't have that. You've got to get rid of all that heat because it's, you know, not energy efficient, and go straight with the perfect spectrum to destroy your health. It is 455 nanometers on the spectrum of sunlight. That is like the killer. It destroys your melanopsin, and it creates free vitamin A, which just, I'm not going to go on all the health stuff because we'll be here all day, but it just causes havoc on every hormone, you know, vitamin, cellular level. It's just horrific.
Got it. So I mean, we're biochemically short-circuiting, and we're now in this toxic environment. So I know we could go on about that because I think we many of us know about it or hear about it, and it's a crisis state. I mean, it's not an understatement to say that that's where we're at right now in our society, right?
I think we're going to see 10 to 20% of people living in the city die over the next 5 years. That's how bad I think it really is. If they don't die, they're going to be chronically ill. You're seeing now lifespan is now falling in cities. We've been getting higher and higher and higher. Now we've topped and we're going down.
Yeah.
And with COVID and everything else, it's just much worse.
Yeah. And we could keep expanding on that, but I want to bring us back to water. You said we'll get back to water, right? So let's focus back on water, because you're talking about light a bit, and we're talking about light that doesn't work for us. So what's the key role of water in our wellness? So take us gently into this topic and start to shed light on the nature of water itself. So in this series, we've learned about different kinds of water that a lot of people didn't know about before. I mean, we even had names for them. Wallace J. Nichols started to talk about wild versus domestic water. So he was touching on, you know, even virtual water, that all of it has an impact on us. But you know, you're talking about, you know, there's not the water that you hydrate yourself is, but take us into the cells. There's something that we'd like to learn about, the real understanding of cellular water.
So to answer your first question, it is literally life or death. That's what water determines. You mentioned that the human body has roughly 70% water, and that's kind of true. But what we don't understand is that when we're born, we're 80% water. Babies are 80% water, and when we're old and die, we're 60% water. So what happened? Like we're drinking the same amount of water. How did we lose that 20%? How did we get dehydrated? We got dehydrated because and I'm a bit of a water expert. Like I'm an expert in nothing. I'm more a generalist, but I've done a lot of work on water, and I don't know how many millions of water samples we've collected at JBS&G, but we've done a lot. I thought I knew a lot about water, and I know about Pollock's work, and I watched Vader's brilliant presentation on taking his work to the next level. So I knew water was consciousness. I knew water had memory. I knew water, the more spiritual side of the water side. But what I didn't know, and this shocked me, it's not the water you drink that's important. It's the water you make that determines your health. Now, most people don't know that we make water. We make water through mitochondria. So we have two forms of DNA. We have the nuclear DNA, which is like the hardware, and then we have mitochondrial DNA, which is the software, just to give you an analogy. So mitochondria is all about energy. Now, the other interesting thing to tie it back to mothers and water is we only get that DNA from our mother. We don't get it from our father. So it's really important to know where your mitochondria come from, because that determines how you should live your life. Because if you're white, like most people here are, then likely, you need a test, but likely you've got uncoupled mitochondria. So your mitochondria is more about making heat. Whereas if you're coupled mitochondria, if you live on the equator or from Africa, you are coupled. So you don't need to make heat because you're in hot environments all the time. It's all about energy bursts, like running away from that tiger. So you need to know which mitochondria are. So mitochondria is well known for making ATP, the energy thing. But what we don't know is we also make, some people call it a byproduct. It's not a byproduct. It's actually a really important part of biology. We make this water that Jared Pollock, discovered, which I call metabolic water. There's lots of different names for it. Now, metabolic water is made by mitochondria. So what happens between a baby, which has got super healthy mitochondria, it's the most enlightened being in the universe when you were first born, and then we're conditioned and takes it all away, to when we're, in our elderly state. Our mitochondria start to break down. It's a natural process of aging. If you want to get into the real geeky stuff, Dr. Douglas Wallace is the international expert on mitochondria. He came to determine this thing called heteroplasmy, which is the number of mutant mitochondria you have in a cell. So in our brain, our heart, and our stomach, we have thousands of mitochondria in every cell, thousands, about 3,000 in our brain. But, in my little toe, I might just have a couple, because my little toe doesn't need a lot of energy. My brain does, my heart does, my stomach does, which are actually 3 brains as far as I'm concerned. And even the skin could be part of the brain. So we naturally age by our mitochondria slowly degrading. That is how we die. And we die through dehydration because we're not making enough intracellular water, not the extracellular water, the intracellular water in the cell. And this is this special water, this, metabolic water.
So what's unique about that water, Jason? And this would be a bit revealing for people because they're so used to 3 states of water. There's a liquid, a gas, and we've taught this from school. So you're broaching territory that none of us have experienced in our biology in school, in high school. Well,
they should read Jared Pollock's book. It's actually really well written at a kind of 3rd, 6th grade level. It's not too scientific, so I think everyone should go and read that. The water that we make is special for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is very low in deuterium. And deuterium water allows more of the infrared light, which is really the light that activates not just the water production, but gives us all the information from the sun into our body, and it goes absorbed by that water, and that water then disperses through our entire body, communicating with all the other cells, telling it exactly what it needs to do. It's really mitochondria that determine how healthy you are, not your nuclear DNA. Your nuclear, you might be born with hunting disease or some kind of disease that's definitely genetic, but it won't trigger until your mitochondria aren't working properly. So we can actually reverse every chronic disease if we get back to nature, we get access to these frequencies from the sun, access to the frequencies from the earth, and make this water where these frequencies can communicate with all our biological processes. So it's the water you make, not the water you drink, that's more important. Now, it's important to drink water. You know, what does your mother say? Have you had enough water? Like, you know, dehydration is probably the #1 killer in the world. You know, we really need water, but it's the water you make. So you can drink as much water as you want, best water in the world. But if you stay inside with no sun, you're in deep shit.
So talk a bit about deuterium. You touched on that, and help us understand what it is and why it's important. What is deuterium, first of all,
Okay.
and then, you know, flesh out its connection, you know, pardon the pun, to water and wellness. So
deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen. So hydrogen has 3 isotopes: strontium, which is hydrogen, deuterium, and tritium. Tritium is the radioactive isotope, which can only be made through nuclear power plants and this, that, and the other. Deuterium is twice the mass of a hydrogen, of a protein. So it's fat. And inside your body, we use hydrogen, right? We use electrons and we use hydrogen as a way to allow it's called a Krebs cycle. So I won't go into too much details. I can give you some references later to go into it. But basically, you've got this bicycle, these 2 cycles that run like this, and hydrogen comes through. And the more hydrogen you're getting through, the faster the wheel spins and everything works happily. But if you get this molecule that's twice as fat as hydrogen, it clogs those wheels. It clogs it up so they can't move. And then you start getting this heteroplasmy, this mitochondrial damage, because it doesn't function anymore, because it's not getting what it needs. So deuterium is a critical factor in health. And most of the research came out of Russia, Hungary, and Romania. The Eastern Europeans are much more advanced on quantum biology and quantum electrodynamics than we are. We're catching up. The West is catching up, but they led the way. And you know, there's great studies on pretty much any metabolic disease, so diabetes, cancer, and the effect of lowering your body deuterium levels down, because we're all artificially high in deuterium because we're doing everything wrong. You know, the way to get deuterium down is to live with nature. That'll naturally do it. If we live inside, we increase our deuterium. If you eat processed foods, any hydrolysis will increase deuterium. If you decide to be a vegan, you're going to have a lot of deuterium, because plants and fruits especially are really high in deuterium. A little side fact, which is kind of interesting, is babies are deuterium bombs. They are born loaded with deuterium, which is a good thing. Deuterium is not a contaminant. Let's not call this a nasty contaminant. It's not. Babies are full of deuterium because deuterium is all related to growth. So babies need to grow. So they're naturally high in deuterium. It's a natural process. It's the reason fruits have so much deuterium, because when they fall to the ground, they need to grow. So the tree or the plant will put all the deuterium into the fruit. So deuterium increases in humans when we don't use natural processes to allow the body to just deal with it. By living inside and hanging around technology and artificial light, that's how we also increase our deuterium.
So it's to make it simple and dumb it down, it's like a growth factor when you're young and when you need it, and especially if you would need to seed and recreate and grow and increase your biological mass, but later it's not good for us, right?
No, and the main way we get deuterium is through water. People would say actually breathing, you get a lot of water through breathing as well, but so water is the main way we get deuterium, because we, by volume, drink a lot more deuterium through water than we do through food. So Australia's naturally high in deuterium. And
Australia is naturally high in deuterium, you're saying?
Yeah, you're naturally low. And there's a very easy explanation for that, because nature is wonderful. Everything's already worked out for you. So in Australia, we have the oldest continent. It's very weathered. It is very hot, especially out in the bush. So the deuterium levels come from the sky, from the clouds, and they usually fall close to the coast because it's where the mountain is, and as soon as you hit land, rain falls. So the first levels of deuterium. So I went and sampled the whole country for deuterium because I just wanted to know. Because Dr. Jack Cruz, who was kind of my mentor in quantum biology, and I'm not a health guy, I'm an environmental guy. So please don't think I'm a doctor or giving any health advice. I'm not. Go and study his work. He's the best. People don't like him because he's quite rude, and, you know, he's a neurosurgeon. So, you know, they're taught to be arseholes. That's kind of what the degree's in, being an arsehole. And he's got 2 of them. So he's a double arsehole.
He's a very smart asshole, though.
He's a genius. I mean, he's the medical genius of the world. I really believe that. So you put the personality aside and just look at the information. It's very hard going because you're doing quantum mechanics with medicine. So the 2 hardest degrees in the world you're doing. So it's tough going, but it's easy to implement. That's the good news. If you want to get right down to the quantum, it's really, really involved, but the solutions are really simple. So the deuterium levels in Australia kind of run from around 150 to 160. The lowest deuterium I've seen is 149 ppm, whereas where you are, especially further you go towards, you know, the pole, the lower deuterium levels are. And there's a good reason for that. So the lowest I've ever seen is 90 in some US Navy base in the Arctic. But you guys have got naturally occurring deuterium levels around 120 to 140. So you're much lower than us. It's because you don't have any sun.
That's why they're after our water.
If you're
That all makes sense now.
Yeah, so if you're you know, introit up there in northern Canada, you are reliant on fat, because fat actually increases your mitochondrial activity. I can't remember, but it's at least double what you do when you get from carbs, and it might be even 10 times more activity. So you guys rely on fat and low deuterium water to keep yourself healthy. Down here, down under, we rely on the sun. And that's the difference. So we can naturally deplete our deuterium levels by getting in the sun. But guess what we don't do? We don't go in the sun because some idiot went and made it a class 1 carcinogen. And I can tell the story on how that happened and the facts behind it all. But
actually, I'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear that story, right? I mean, how on earth did we create something that was a source of light itself, that fires, like the literally fires of the engine of photosynthesis and you know, all the biological functions on the earth, and make it a carcinogen? How the hell did that happen?
Drugs, pharmaceutical. So if you go back to the early days, there was a therapy called heliotherapy. So heliotherapy was literally, it's still used for tuberculosis. The number one way to get rid of tuberculosis is go in the sun. No drug has ever gone close to going to the sun for TB. And if you have a look at the stats, there's hardly any diseases on the equator. And the further you get away from the equator, the more diseases we have. So there's no MS and all those autoimmunes in Indonesia or along the equator. Very little cases. So what happened, you know, I'm not going to go through the history, but we know about the Egyptians and the sun gods and the worshipping of the ancient worshipping of the sun. But heliotherapy was used by a guy, there's several guys, but Niels Finsen won a Nobel Prize in 1903 for the medical use of UV light. He won a Nobel Prize back in the early 1900s. So when, and there were hospitals built at altitude in the Scandinavian countries, in Sweden and so forth. The reason you go to altitude is because you get more UV at a higher altitude. And they would put their patients outside on their beds and they all get better. Just They had other medical things they needed to do, but it was the sunlight that was the dominating factor. But then, you know, we invented pesticides and pharmaceuticals, and, you know, all of a sudden money was the biggest thing. So you can't make any money from having free sunlight. So they had to demonize it. And it's just a horrific story, really, because don't start me, but the main thing that happened was also driven by fashion. So the pharmaceutical industry said, okay, the sun is bad. Why do they say the sun is bad? They did these studies using these UV lamps, these big, powerful UV lamps on mice. It was a retinal cancer that was caused by these UV lights in these mice. So because UV light from that artificial spectrum they did from indoor use gave these mice retinal cancer, they just said, okay, UV is bad. Oh, the sun's got UV, the sun is bad. That was the mean they used to do it. And then the fashion industry came in with sunglasses, and that really gave it the emphasis it needed. So sunglasses were invented for fashion. They weren't invented for eye health. The biggest lie ever. They're just for fashion. You should never wear sunglasses for the rest of your life, ever. I haven't worn sunglasses for 5 years. And I used to have the beginning of old man's disease, you know, when you're going like that, trying to read the newspaper. Gone. I got perfect eyesight. I'm 54 and my eyesight's perfect. In fact, if you get your eyes in the sun, particularly in the morning sun, you don't want to stare at the sun when it's in the middle of the day, because that's when it's high UV. But in the morning, there's no UV. And at sunset, it's just mainly infrared. Now, UVA starts about 1 to 2 hours after the sunrise, so it builds up. The other cool thing about morning sunrise, it gives you a natural suntan. So like an SP factor of about 8 is the natural level you get from getting sunrise on your skin. And it makes sense, right? Because nature gave us the natural sunscreen to allow us to take, you know, the really hot UV midday sun. And, you know, even the originators of Australia don't go in midday sun. Like they sit under a tree by the river. And that's stupid. We do. Like it's school holidays here at Noosa, and everyone from Brisbane turns up. And you see them, these pasty white office workers. When do they show up? Oh, 12 o'clock. Right in the middle of midday sun. And they wonder why they end up being a lobster. They have no idea.
Jason, how did we even make it this far? I don't know. It's absurd. So disconnected.
We're very resilient. Human beings are very, very resilient and can actually adapt to these artificial frequencies, but we haven't got enough time. Like we do justice to the AC and maybe the radar, but maybe now we're no hope. We're no hope to adjust. It's gone beyond where we have to fix it. We have to fix the technology. Safe technology is what we need to fix. And we need to tell people that the sun is the most healing thing. And if you can combine it with water, I know there's a question you talked about in our pre-interview that I see the sun as a cathode. Mm-hmm. We are the filament, like we're the element, and the earth is the anode. So this cathode, the sun, activates the electrons in the anode. And if we're in the middle of that, wow, our redox potential, which is another technical term, it's really the net negative charge of your cell. And it's really important to have high redox, because best way to explain it would be like an electrical fence around a farm. It basically stops any intruders getting in. So if your redox goes down, all the intruders come in. So I can have naturally high mercury levels, which I do, not naturally, because I eat too much seafood, which is really important. But it doesn't affect me because my redox is so important, my body just deals with it. That's why you don't get sick. If your redox is really high, and you need both the water, the sun, and the earth to do all that. In my opinion, the Holy Trinity is the sun, the earth, and us. That's my Holy Trinity. Sorry to all the Christians out there. But to me, that is the Holy Trinity. And we've just lost connection with that.
Wow, beautifully put. Beautifully put. It's so coherent. It makes so much sense when you speak it, Jason. And as a child, when I was told, oh, you know, stay out of the sun, later as I developed cataract, you know, I was told that it was because of the sun. And part of me was like, that's complete bullshit. It was like, how could something that gives me energy and light and everything else and fuels, I could see it as a kid, I didn't need a science degree to figure that out, suddenly become an enemy? I mean, that's how I heard it as a young person, and it never made any sense.
I'll give you a personal story. So in 2017, I had a squamous cell carcinoma in my lip. You might better see through the camera, but there's a scar that runs here. So if I do that, you can see a third of my bottom lip is gone because I had my face hacked off because of a squamous cell carcinoma, skin cancer. I also had a basal cell adenoma on my shoulder. And when I was with all the doctors, they said, oh, that's because you spent so much time in the sun as a kid. Now, I spent 30 years inside building a company and not getting hardly any sun under all these artificial frequencies. And I'm saying to them, hang on a sec, I spent the past 3 decades away from the sun, and you're telling me something that is a teenager playing cricket and surfing is the cause of these cancers? They said, oh, it's definitely that. And I said, that's bullshit. It can't be true. It doesn't make any logical sense. No, you can't say that. We're a doctor. I don't give a shit who you are. You're full of shit. And I get so cranky with them. And I've been out in the sun for 5 years with no sunscreen, no sunglasses. And, I'm coming out of winter and, I've got a tan that most people are jealous with in the middle of summer. I've got nothing but really good health. Like, I've lost, since I've been doing these protocols, I've lost 60 kilos. I was 155 kilos. I've had 22 chronic conditions that I've been managing through these natural protocols. Now, you need some medicine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with medicine or Chinese herbs or supplements, but only when you're sick. You don't need it if your body can make it. And, I don't want to go down the health route because...
Oh, hang on. That's gold. I mean, that's sun shining on everybody right now. So if your body can make it, it's not just let thy food be thy medicine. It's literally like let your own natural systems be your own medicine.
Totally. Well, think about food. So food is just sunlight in cold storage. That's all it is. So you can bypass the food. They call themselves breatharians. Now, I've met a couple. They are complete airheads, so I don't recommend it. But they can, and they still eat a bit of fruit, right? They still eat a little bit. They can survive so well because they're up every morning getting all the essence of that wonderful frequencies that the sun gives us. That's how they can do it. So food's important. And the reason we need food and a tree doesn't, the reason the tree doesn't, because it's outside with a canopy all the way open and its roots are in the earth. So it's permanently that conduit between the cathode and the anode. It's redox potential, which it doesn't have because they use chloroplast, not mitochondria, but let's just keep the analogy going. That's why they don't need any food, because they don't move. We're designed to move. So we can, move all around the world now with planes, but even when we didn't have planes, we could walk long distances. So because we move, we are not permanently connected, and therefore we need food for sustenance.
Got it. But we're still, it's so amazing that you said that, Jason, because I used to share with people that, try to think of yourself as a human being, as a tree, because you do have your head in the clouds and connected to the sun and your feet are grounded on the earth, right? So in a way you are a conduit. You're literally, a conduit between these two, cathode and anode, right? But talk a little bit more about, I love that, food is sunlight and cold storage. Let's start with sunlight and water in plants, and then in human beings, this idea of human solar panels. You talked about skin and that we sound like we're photoelectric beings. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that, and especially about the role of skin, because you're talking about not wearing sunscreen. So now the effect of wearing sunscreen must interrupt some process that's natural.
Oh, totally. It destroys it. So people don't realize that the central nervous, well, actually the nervous system, not just the central and peripheral nervous system, and skin grow at the same time in utero. They're actually part of the same system. The skin, in a way, is an extension of the brain in many, many ways, or the whole central nervous system. And, you can dive into the brain skin axis. You can type into Google and you can go nuts on all the different things. But for me, it's like a neuroendocrine organ. That's what skin really is. So there's a range of hormones, neuropeptides, neurotransmitters, all in your skin, right? I can go through all the names, but let's use melatonin. Just do one, because there are literally 20 or 30 that go on. So melatonin, everyone thinks that's a nighttime hormone, and they're partly correct. You need 3 hours of complete darkness. So when you sleep, you should not be able to see your hand. Right? Most people don't sleep in complete darkness. It's really important to sleep in complete darkness. And after 3 hours of that, your melatonin starts working. But it's not made at night. It's made in the morning through sunrise. The frequencies of red light. That's where it's made. That's why we have so much melatonin problems. And if you take it orally, it doesn't work as well, because you've got this positive negative feedback loop in there. And if you take external supplements, that natural process atrophies, it breaks down and may not work longer term. So anything your body can make, you should not take. Now, the skin is amazing, right? It's the biggest organ. It absorbs so much. It rids us of so much through sweat. So when we're doing detox, that's why, the red light saunas are so good for detox. So skin is so critical. But what do? We cover it up. We lather it with sunscreen. And we do that because we've been conned about the dangers of sunlight, which is just not true. I don't know how much more detail you want to go into skin, but let's talk about vitamin D. So vitamin D is a very hot topic now. So vitamin D is naturally made through sunlight hitting the skin. It gets red, the pinkness is actually the capillaries coming to the surface to absorb all those beautiful frequencies we get from the sun. Then part of that is vitamin D. Technically, vitamin D is not actually a vitamin, but let's not get pedantic. And then that gets converted into the form of vitamin D the body really needs by the liver and some by the kidneys. So if you it's got to go through the sulfation process. So the pill you take is unsulfated. So it's not going to work very well. It'll work on some things, but not really well. So you need to go for this sulfate. You need to go through the natural process of getting sun on your skin, getting it absorbed into the capillaries, taking down through your body into your livers and kidneys, and it starts the sulfation process that turns it into the exact version of vitamin D that we need to pretty much cure nearly every disease. So all the studies are now showing that all-cause mortality increases with vitamin D deficiency. All-cause mortality, every disease. Now, the reason we are having coronavirus here in Noosa and in Queensland is because the sun kills it.
It's that dangerous.
It just kills the virus. So we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Yeah, but they won't tell you that, of course.
We could go deep into that. And the reason why lockdown or being out of the sun for an extended period of time, not such a great idea either. Clearly.
You need to get as much sun as you can handle.
Got it.
Absolutely as much as you can without getting burnt.
Yeah.
So you got to build your skin callus, right? Your skin callus. So yeah. I got a blood test the other day, and they couldn't get through my skin. They said, your skin is so tough. I'm so happy to hear that, because my skin callus is now so strong that I can stay outside pretty much all day and not get burnt, because I've built up my natural skin callus.
And of course, that was made to be a negative thing in fashion and the cosmetic industry as well, right? It's not a good thing. Wow, it looks like the entire paradigm's upside down.
Well, the Indian culture and Sri Lankan culture is all about being as white as you can, because the darker you are, you become an untouchable, you're lower class citizen. So the programming we've had around the sun goes right back to Vedic days. It's just ridiculous.
So let's go back to something you said earlier about we talk about food, and I want to make sure everybody listening has something practical to take away. I mean, you said, like, practically get as much sun as possible. Wake up with the sun. Get your natural, sunscreen from the morning sun. These are all counter, social conditioning right now and what we've been told to do. But let's talk about the kinds of water and the kinds of food that'll benefit us. So if we can't get sun right away and we're stuck inside, what else can we do? Do you have stories about, I know you shared something about apples and oysters. I mean, what is the kind of food we really need to help us, and be well?
Yeah. Okay, so let's tell the apple story. So, we brought up apple a day keeps the doctor away. And that actually comes from eating the apple seed. The apple seed actually contains like a cyanide type substance that helps kill things, the cancer and whatever that grows in your body. But when I was out at Uluru is the Ayers Rock, you might have know it by. Uluru is the originating name. Big monolith, massive just rock in the middle of nowhere in the desert of Australia. And I've been there 7 times, and I go out to Cave Hill. Cave Hill is a rock painting cave that has been dated to 25,000 years. And they've got paintings of so many amazing stuff there. And I get to sit down with some of the elders there because I've been there so many times. And it was funny, I took a tour group out from a friend's company and I gave them all apples because it's a 3-hour drive and we're going to have lunch there just to, keep them happy. And they're getting out chewing on their apples and this elder goes, "You white fellas," shaking his head, "you white fellas have no idea. It's not an apple a day that keeps a doctor away. It's a muscle." Now, he was referring to oysters. Now, back in the original days, there was a big ocean in the middle of Australia. So they were common mussels out there. Now you wouldn't get any because it's a desert. So marine seafood has everything you want for human health, everything. And the number one thing it has, what you can't get anywhere else and the body cannot make, is this omega-3 fatty acid called DHA. Now there's 3 omega-3, ALA, EPA, and DHA. Now DHA is easily converted to EPA through any processing. So the number one thing to eat is cold oysters. Number one health food in the world is an oyster or any bivalve. It can be a mussel, it can be a scallop, but oysters are the best. Now you want to eat oysters from a pristine waterway because they are filter feeders, and if you don't take them off the rocks at your local harbour because it could be contaminated, so you need to eat good fresh oysters from quality places. But DHA is the lipid that makes up the cell membrane, and it's really badly deteriorated through modern life. So blue light from the artificial lighting and the non-native EMF destroy EMA. We're chronically deprived of DHA. And people go, "I'll just take fish oil." The problem with fish oil, it's manufactured. So you're breaking down the DHA into an EPA or an ALA, which is not what we need. We need the DHA. So the number one way to get DHA is through oysters and clams and those bivalves. Second best is crustaceans, so your prawns, your lobsters, your crabs. Third best is cold fish, and then your reef fish should be after that. So that's why I unfortunately have not high, but elevated levels of mercury, is because I eat seafood every day. I eat 3 dozen oysters a week. And I eat it because it's medicine, not because it's food. Now, I destroyed my mitochondria, right? 3 decades of living inside, I destroyed it. I got really sick. And I had to recover. And the only way I could do that was getting back into nature and eating lots of oysters and getting and it's not just DHA, you've got iodine, you've got dissolved copper, not normal copper, dissolved copper is what you need. You got your magnesium, you've got, all the things you need, selenium and the rest of them in seafood. That's how we got smart. Humans got smart by eating seafood. That's how we became who we are today, by consuming seafood. And now you've got the bloody greenies running around. And it's funny, I bag in greenies all the time as an environmentalist. That's because they're nuts. Most of them are crazy. They don't get it. And I get criticized a lot for that, but I'm telling you, we need our marine seafood, we need our sunlight, and we need our water. And you need to be in water. Like, it's not just drinking it. You need to be in it. I know you guys are all kayakers and I'm a scuba diver, so I like getting under. But your kayaks at least are the best built for being in the water in a craft. And that's why, it's the reason I'm here today, is because when Nolan told me the history, I just went, wow, this is amazing. It's exactly what the world needs. So congrats.
Jason, we thought this was going to be a deep dive. It's actually like a dive down the deepest cenote. It's like going down that blue hole, that Cousteau explored, right? And there's no end to it.
And cenote is the great word because cenotes are full of limestone, right?
Aha.
So you've got your natural minerals. That's why, all the cenotes in Mexico are so healthy for you. They are just amazing. That's the reason.
Oh my God, this is like we could keep on covering this forever. But I want to start to close us off, right? I hate to do that because we could go on for hours. I know you warned us about that, but I want to end off with a couple things. I want to talk a little bit about the science and the sacred. You said we'd come back to the spiritual aspect to this. You're clearly analytical, scientific, and you're spiritual. You understand a sacred relationship to nature and the earth. That's clear. You're professing not to be a health expert, but everything you say, sort of disproves that. But you talk from the environment, so you're connected.
Not because I was so sick and I had to work out a way to get better.
But
I'm a patient, not a doctor.
Oh, thank God. You might be able to speak with some experience about things. But, where are we going here? I mean, where is science going to take us? And what's the last word on how we resolve this, right? I mean, if we're going to artificial frequencies and we're pushing technology and all that, that end game does not sound so great from everything you've said today. But what could bridle it?
I'm very hopeful about the future. What happened with scientism, it became a religion and they got rid of everything spiritual, right? And said, oh, that's religion. Go over there and do religion. No, it's always been part of science. Science is just a great way to ask really good questions. That's all science is. We have a hypothesis, we do some research, see if anyone's answered it. If they haven't, we run some experiments and we find out if we're right or wrong. If we're wrong, then we can change and do it again. It's just a way to answer questions. That's been lost and it's been turned into scientism, like a religion. So all the modern day transhumanism and technocracy came out of scientism. And that's who controls the world today. They are hyper-materialists. It's all about matter. That's all they care about. They think the way to evolve as a human being is to put a chip in our head that have this brain machine interface so we can blink our eyes and, look at Google or something. It's just ridiculous. Now, the good news is they can never win. They can never win because they miss the most important part of being a human, which is the spiritual side, which is that connection with divine intelligence. That's why they can't win. Now, the problem I see with what they're doing now, and it's going to get a lot worse, we're not going back to where we came from, is they may kill 2 billion people trying. That may happen. That's why I say 10 to 20% of people are going to die in cities prematurely because they're going to fall for this virtual reality world, right? It's so amazing, all the tools, all the gadgets, rah, rah, rah. And you can see our kids are already addicted, right? They really are addicted. And you thought gaming was a problem? Wait till you see what's coming. Like, they're just not going to leave. It's like the holodeck on Star Trek. You create whatever you want, you never want to leave. So if they're trying to create a machine world and destroy our sovereignty, which is really an attack on our sovereignty, it's not just our freedom, it's our sovereign being they're really going at. The solution is to become more human. That's the solution. If they want us to be a machine, we need to be as human as we can, right? We really need to get into our heart, soul, essence, right? Go within. Every greatest teacher said, go within. And there's a really good reason for that, is because it's an inside-out job. It's not outside in. We create so much energy, so much love, unconditional love, that it pours out of us. I mean, it literally streams out of us. We can run a city on the electricity that we generate just from ourselves if we knew how to tap into it. So how do we do this? How do we go within? Well, it's getting close to nature. Like Dax was telling a story earlier about hanging out with polar bears and taking photos for National Geographic. Wow, what a great hobby. You know, I hang out in the ocean and let's talk, I'll finish with a little story about sharks because I want to finish on water. And everyone's really shit scared of sharks. And for good reason. You know, you hit a great white, you're dead. So I taught a lovely American lady at a conference. I was in Kona with Joan Ocean. Joan Ocean has been studying the dolphins in the Big Island of Hawaii for a long, long time. Very spiritual lady, amazing. And people come and say, how come all these dolphins just jump on your head and, you know, always hang around you? And I said, well, it's really easy. You've got to connect to what I call, and it's just my label, you can have your own label, I call it the Lady of the Sea. So the sea is a living entity and it streams with life. Interdimensionally, I can't tell you how many beings hang out there. It's amazing. But the Lady of the Sea, and there's a master, there's a father of the sea as well, but the Lady of the Sea, because it's Mother Earth, is who I connect with. And when I enter the water, I just enter the water with amazing levels of gratitude and unconditional love. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to go into her belly, like literally into her essence, and experience all the life that comes from it. So this woman challenged me and I said, okay, you come on our boat, because we're doing the snorkeling trips, and I'm on this smaller boat and they didn't know me and said, well, you can't leave the boat for more than 20 meters. I said, I'm wearing a weight belt. I'm the only one here with a weight belt. Do you think I know how to swim? I'm going in with a weight belt. But anyway, they wouldn't have a bar of it. So I said, okay, we'll just hang near the boat. And everyone swam off to where the dolphins were. And I taught Kathy, I said, right, just connect with the sea. Get really grateful. Bring out that unconditional love that we all have. And we will just stay on the surface. We won't move. And I could see through the corner of my eye, 2 young juvenile humpbacks coming swimming over. Swam over. One stayed to the side, the other one literally turned belly up, right underneath us, probably 3 or 4 meters of water. And, you know, I don't know how it happens, but I could kind of communicate with whales. And he said, come and lay on my belly. So I went down and laid on his belly. The poor woman who said, I can't swim and I can't go any further, she lost it. She said, how the hell did that happen? I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never seen that. Da, 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 da. And that's all because I went in the water with this gratitude and love for the Lady of the Sea. Now, if you're a shark, sharks aren't looking for gratitude and love. They're looking for death. They're looking for really negative energy because they're scavengers, right? That's their role. So if you go into the water full of great whites or tiger sharks, they won't see you. They literally cannot see you. So you can never get eaten. So when you go into the water, go in with the gratitude, go in with that love that we have for the ocean, and you'll just have the most amazing experiences you've ever seen.
Jason, we have nothing but gratitude for what you've offered today. Okay, this is, I don't know, I want to say a breath of fresh air, but it's been more like a, like crystal clear metabolic water in torrents coming down with sunlight piercing its crystalline structure. I mean, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you for the difference you've made to our planet. Thank you for the sense you bring. You know, when the truth is spoken the way you do, it's coherent. It doesn't require evidence or information or Google. You know, it just comes out in this crystalline form. And we're looking for more of that. You know, this whole series is about seeking out the common sensors in the world, the ones who haven't lost it, the ones that are still connected, the ones that are bringing that back. So thank you for that. And thank you for making a full connection between, you know, Inuit diet even, you know, the fat and the kayak and the role, you know, the purpose-driven role that track has. and for speaking with us so many thousands of kilometers away, but with a universal truth. I mean, this is something the Earth needs to hear. So thank you for all that. It's been a real pleasure.